and what I'm going to be talking about in terms of what I think this country needs. So this is a real honor for me to be here, and my wife is here. I'd like to recognize her. If we could give her a round of applause. If you don't know her, and she's the boss. So anyway, you know, there are times when I get to talk a little bit about where I'm from and who I am. And I'm from a small community of Wagon Mound, which probably some of you have heard by now. But really, Wagon Mound is 300 people on a good day. And one public school, 2 gas stations, a store, and a lot of great people, very humble people. And the reason I share that with you is because they have anxieties as well about the country as you do. And they've been in a struggle for a long time. And northeastern New Mexico has been in a struggle much longer than when this recession started. So you learn a couple things when you're in a permanent struggle in Wagon Mound. I learned very quickly that my grandfather, that while he didn't have a lot, what he gave me was enough to provide for my family, prosper, work hard out of poverty into the middle class. And when I was living in public housing with a single mother, and I remember 2 very clear numbers. And one was how many food stamps we got to make it through the month. And the second was the $90, or what they call cash assistance. And what they would call that today are somewhat maybe TANF funds, the cash assistance program. And after you pay public housing, there's not a lot left. And so when we talk about the state of the country and the struggles that we're in, there's a real personal feeling that I get when I think about the people that are struggling. And what I'm here to tell you tonight is that the solutions are there. Because in many ways I've lived the struggle and I've also seen the solutions. And what's coming out of Washington today frustrates Americans and it frustrates New Mexicans. And that frustration is very real. What is more frustrating is that some elected leaders do not seem to talk with a sense of urgency that we as a great nation have addressed in past challenges. We've come together in this country under foreign threats and united and responded with great rigor. And yet what we're feeling in this country today domestically feels like we're under attack. This is gonna be annoying, I think.
Sorry, Hector.
That's where it is.
Is it, if I just leave the cord alone, I can tell you. So what I'm trying to say is that when we talk as leaders about people hurting and losing their homes and the struggle, I just want you to have some confidence, whether I'm running for office or serving as your state auditor, that I know what those struggles are. So when people are losing their homes and struggling to find a job, and we're having debates in Washington about whether or not education is important or not, or whether infrastructure is important or not, I want you to know that those issues for me are very personal because of my upbringing. Now it saddens me because I didn't know the rest of the country was so challenged. It hurts me when I hear people say that now Americans are actually going to believe that their children are going to be worse off. Because I never believed that, even though I was in a permanent recession myself. that's the one glimmer of hope that I had that got me driving 42 miles to school. Or got me to take chances. Or got me to believe that I could one day be an attorney or serve in public life. Because when you're in the shadows, all you have is that belief that this country is great and that other people will lend a hand and that all Americans want all Americans to succeed. If we lose that hope, we are in much more dire straits. So now that the country is not optimistic and we are worried about our children and whether or not we are in permanent decline, I'm here to tell you that there are some things we can do. And the first is making sure that Heather Wilson never ever becomes a U.S. Senator. I see a nation very clearly that there's a better way. And I know Heather Wilson for a fact believes that privatizing Social Security is a good thing. And even with the erratic performance of Wall Street and the unchecked power and greed in Wall Street, she really believes that she can take our Social Security, a plan that you've invested in, and somehow putting it in the stock market is going to produce American robust results. And I believe that we have to fight tooth and nail to protect Social Security because it's one of the things that we have growing for us in this country. I know that she supports a plan to end Medicare, another great bedrock program that you've invested in that has made this the security net, the envy of the world. And yet she supports the idea that somehow passing the buck to already troubled states and creating a voucher program is somehow going to be better for seniors, when the reality, when leading economists say that you're just passing a $6,000 to $7,000 cost already onto the elderly. Now we need to elect someone who can really win this debate and protect Medicare. She's also for a plan that would cut education, which blows my mind. Because if you look at the global economy right now, we have multinationals all over the world doing everything they can possibly do, risking their life, applying to 50 universities to try to get into this higher ed institutions all over our United States. And yet she supports a plan to cut Pell Grants for our own American students, and somehow believes that's patriotic or fiscally accountable. What really chaps me though, because there's a class or a little citizen that enjoys Head Start. And Head Start's another phenomenal middle class program. And when I say middle class, it takes what's a poor family and has hope that they will at some point break into the middle class and contribute and become great taxpayers. So her plan that she supports will put out about 320,000 youngsters who are already struggling with hygiene issues, that are already struggling with unstable home environments, that are in their early cognitive years. When Head Start was a bedrock program that started many decades ago because we knew it was the right thing to do for America. We knew it was going to pay off in terms of dividends and create a stronger workforce and a better nation, and it was the ethical thing to do. She's in support of a plan that would actually take hundreds of thousands of youngsters out of the Head Start program. Now, as a state auditor, we've protected those funds federally. in some of the most rural, desolate areas of New Mexico. So there is an on-the-ground effect. And yet she has the gall to call herself a person that's running for public life and public office. It's appalling what is being advocated for out of the GOP. And my problem is that I think that we somehow have not united in a way to put the recession in proper perspective. As progressives and Democrats, we somehow are struggling to figure out a way to send a voice to Washington, D.C. that truly has lived the issues and truly will get beyond politics and promote ideas that are already sound ideas that have already worked throughout the history of our country. Civil rights, investing in infrastructure, investing in education, investing in the poor, creating a public jobs plan. These are all programs that we have promoted and succeeded in the past. So now the real fight is protecting those programs and increasing investment in those areas. So how do we really do that? Well, my frustration is that there is a detachment from Washington and the political process, from the real people that we serve. And so we as Democrats have to get more people involved. And how do you get more people involved? Well, we have to get people that have lived the issues and that relate very closely and intimately to the electorate. Now, as auditor, I've done a lot with very little in my public life. We've had 25 employees protecting $60 billion in your assets, and we've never, ever backed down from a fight. We have to have someone that's going to win the fiscal accountability debate because it's being used against us. Heather Wilson is not only about gutting the programs that I just talked about. She actually is also going to protect the wealthy and promote tax cuts as a form of job creation. So now more than ever, we need people that have credibility on this very one topic. That fiscal accountability is not a Republican term. That fiscal accountability and fiscal responsibility are actually progressive terms. And that if we elect someone who has a track record of protecting the most sacred funds, Regional Housing Authority embezzlement in Las Cruces, HAVA funds that were intended to get more minorities elected in office, public school funds that were intended to go to poor kids in Jemez Mountain School District. I can go on and on where I've taken this fight and protected those public resources. Progressive programs that were intended to go to people that you want to protect and serve. But we're a little behind the times sometimes as Democrats. We think there's always one path to winning this fight, and I'm here to tell you there's another way. That if we look to leadership that maybe has a different type of voice, that if you give the underdog a little bit of a chance, that that voice might resonate a little farther out to people who have given up hope, that we might actually be able to make a fascinating run that we've never seen in New Mexico. That we could go to any community in New Mexico and win the debate. And the debate isn't about an election. It's not even about me or you. I'm going to be fine. And I hate the term rising star, whatever crap they sometimes. I like the term underdog. Because I'm an underdog in life. I've been an underdog most of my life. And I've turned out okay because other people have cared. Other people have stepped in. And even electorally, people have said, give this young man a chance to serve us in the legislature. We've never had a young attorney from Wagon Mountain represent Mora, San Miguel, Taos, Colfax, Guadalupe. And they said, give this young man a chance at 29. When in fact, my own communities were saying in Spanish, and I'll translate, ¿Qué va a hacer ese mocosito? Which means, what is this little snot-nosed kid going to do in the legislature? And I'll tell you what we did. We ended up reforming the criminal justice system, statutes across the board. And the only state that was doing the work that we were doing, because it was the right thing to do, was Illinois. And Illinois had a bad problem of police authorities taking mentally ill and minorities and getting them to confess to crimes that they never committed. So they gave me a bill that was called a poison pill at the time because it had never passed the legislature. And it required law enforcement, when you have serious interrogations, to turn on the tapes because prosecutors wanted best evidence and defense attorneys wanted to make sure that their client wasn't abused. And I passed it in one term with ridicule from every law enforcement agency, every judge, because we had never had that kind of progressive approach in the criminal justice system in New Mexico. Now the other guy in Illinois was the guy that went on to be president that some of you are a little frustrated with. But Illinois was the first state to pass that reform, and we were the second. I was pushing for biomass energy, alternative energies, when it wasn't popular. I was pushing for civil rights in communities that George Bush won, and winning by overwhelming margins. We were building water systems where communities, all they want is clean water and clean air. But it's an unconventional path because it's Wagon Mountain. And it's the citizen legislature. And it's taking a position like state auditor, which was never politically sexy. Professional politicians are not lining up to do that job. But that's okay. Because now every lawmaker knows that we are severely underfunding the security net of accountability in New Mexico. And there's not a Republican in New Mexico that will debate me on corruption, that will debate me on accountability. Because we're truthful and honest about those reforms. And those are progressive values. And that's the kind of fight that we want to take to Washington, D.C. So I'm asking you a couple things. One, kick the tires of your leaders. Look strong and closely at the underdog. Number two, if you don't want to use the word hope or change, I don't care. Just don't give up. Number three, we've got to go and beat the heck out of the GOP. We've got to unite and go to every community throughout New Mexico and make sure that we take the fight to the GOP. Now I have a plan, part philosophy, part advocacy. We have to focus on the economy. Now we've been a great nation to address threats that are abroad. We can take that type of unity and that kind of strength and that kind of investment and attack our threats here domestically. You see, the recession is worse than we thought. And it's even more complicated than just, oh, Johnny's out of a job, and when Johnny gets a job, he's going to then spend. We have to really have a progressive plan to really turn this economy around and reinvigorate the American dream. There is scarring going on. 1 in 4 children in New Mexico are in poverty. So we need to focus on infrastructure, because infrastructure will get people back to work quicker than tax cuts will. We need to invest heavily in education. We need to make sure that our first responders and our police officers and our public safety jobs are not cut at the local and state level. And we need to pursue small business tax credits. It's very simple because we've done this before. Democrats have gotten us out of depressions, they've gotten us out of recessions, and it was Heather Wilson that took the largest surplus and turned it into the largest deficit. It was Heather Wilson's reckless tax cuts that created this whole debt ceiling debate in the first place. So believe in the underdog, give me a chance, we'll take the fight to the GOP, and together we're going to reinvigorate New Mexico and get them believing again in politics, get them believing again in the Democratic Party. Now, if you want to be bold, and you want bold plans to come out of DC, you got to send someone that has a bold background, but you have to be bold. You have to be bold and reach deep down and look to new leaders and fresh ideas and fresh faces. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to the questions.